Revolution of common sense.
Revolution of common sense.
A revolution of common sense.
Truth was once common sense, but today, truth is uncommon. Explore biblical truths around faith, business, and politics with Peter Temis. Uncommon sense in current times.
Hey folks, welcome to Uncommon Sense in Current Times. I am here with Sean Teis, and we are here to talk about an epidemic in America of fatherlessness, homes that do not have fathers in their homes. You know, and I say it's an epidemic, and I don't use that term lightly because the Department of Health and Human Services says that fatherless children are at a dramatically greater risk of drug and alcohol abuse, mental illness, suicide, poor educational performance, teen pregnancy, and criminality. So again, I think it's something that is very important to do, and Sean does a lot of work to deal with this these root causes of a lot of problems we have in our country, which is the lack of fathers. He is the founding president in Life Factors Fatherless Ministries. He's the creator of GodIsMyDad.com. He grew up fatherless himself. He experienced trauma, abandonment, and he kind of transformed himself through the intervention of other godly men. So he's now become a voice for this, and his goal is to get a single moms group to help also with fathers in all of the every county in the United States. So, Sean, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Peter. Excited to be here.
So, I am curious on this. So fatherlessness has a huge impact on lives, and some of the stats that I have seen has been like 85% of the youth in prison don't have fathers, 71% of pregnant teenagers, 3 out of 4 teens that are suicides come with homes that have no fathers. There's just this huge impact on it. You grew up obviously without it. So can you tell us a little bit about your story and how you did not end up being one of those statistics that I just read off?
Yeah, my dad actually grew up fatherless himself too. And so his dad died when he was 13. And then he coped with drug and alcohol addiction and through relationships with women and all kinds of different things. He tried coping with the world's methods, and none of them worked. And then when I was about 9 months old, my dad came home in a drunken rage. He threw my mother and my brother and my sister out of her home, but for some reason he kept me, the little 9-month-old baby. And so there was a past history of abuse. He had beat my mom up before. He had, just done different things. And so my mom was nervous that he was going to do something to me. And so she went over to the neighbor's house. They got the police to show up. The cops showed up, and they demanded that my dad hand me over to them. Instead of gently handing me over in a drunken rage, he took me and he threw me across the room to the cops. And I'm thankful this day that cop could catch. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I normally try to make it light of it, honestly, because it is a really weird story to tell that somebody did that to me. But my dad then packed up his things and went back to his hometown of Las Vegas, Nevada, and never came back. And we started what we call that day the fatherless journey. That's what I've kind of coined with this. The fatherless journey is what a lot of people go through. They grow up without a dad, and so we started that. My brother and sister and I, and then my mom. She became a single mom that day, and so I went down this path of not having a dad in my life, and I'm here to talk about it now. God brought me through it.
So you started this ministry. Give me kind of a quick kind of elevator speech part of this ministry, because I want to kind of dig into some of the questions that I have for this on it, because I think it's a very important work you're doing. So talk to us about what you're doing to help those who don't have fathers.
Yeah, we started Life Factors Ministries in 2008 to help people with the different factors of life that they deal with. And honestly, it became a whole ministry for fatherlessness. And so in 2017, we launched God Is My Dad underneath Life Factors. And God Is My Dad kind of took over the whole ministry. And so we've really just started going by that name, God Is My Dad now. I mean, we still use Life Factors some here and there. It's the same ministry. But through God Is My Dad, we spread awareness. We help people understand what's going on with fatherlessness. We also create unique resources. We've written books for fatherless guys and girls, for single moms. We have children's books for fatherless children, for motherless children, and for orphan and foster care children. Currently, we're republishing all of them. We create devotionals. We're on the YouVersion Bible app. We have free devotionals and stuff that they can access, all kinds of content there. But we create unique resources to help them. I have a new book that I'm working on. It's going to be coming out this year, just called God is My Dad, and just telling my story of God becoming my dad. We also speak around the country. We've been over 200 churches speaking about fatherlessness and spreading awareness about it, but also encouraging individuals that are growing up without that. We've been in youth detention centers. We've been in public schools doing full school public school assemblies. Really, wherever we can get in, either spreading awareness about fatherlessness or spreading hope to the fatherless. That's what we do. And then we also partner with local churches. We establish local ministries to try to help people as they want to minister to the fatherless. And we're starting these single mom support groups. That's one of our new things that we started launching a couple years ago. And we go and help churches launch single mom ministries in their community. And we've seen a major impact with that. So that's one of our big pushes right now.
So that was the part that was, as I was kind of studying about you and what you're doing, that was the part that's why I kind of talked about it a little bit in that bio that was fascinating to me. You want to address the issue of lack of fathers, but you're addressing it through single moms. How does that work? Because it seems to me that you'd want to be talking to men saying, "Hey, you need to be a dad," not, "Hey, mom, you're not, you don't have one." So how does that actually look like?
Well, the reason why we do that is because usually the dad's not going to come back. He's either passed away, he's incarcerated, he's walked away. We've dealt with a lot of families where the dad's living down the street and he does not want anything to do with his family. And so we're trying to address it in the sense of, okay, maybe that dad won't come back. And there's a lot of ministries out there that are for the dads. We're more, and we want to help dads. If dads come to us and they want to be helped with our resources, they're trying to break the cycle of their own fatherless journey, and they made their kids fatherless, we would love to help them. But our path has been helping these single moms as they equip these kids so that they can break the cycle. And that's been my story. My dad grew up fatherless. He made me fatherless. And I, as a cycle breaker, I have to break the cycle. My dad wasn't going to come back. He chose never to come back. Most dads are not going to come back when they've walked away or whatever it might be. Sadly, that's the case. And so how can we go forward, help these kids succeed, go down a path of success and say, okay, your dad's not going to be in your life. And let's just face reality. That's one of the things we talk about in our Fatherless Journey for Guys devotional. It's facing reality, having a reality check. Your dad's not in your life right now. How do we move forward? And so that's kind of the way we go about it, just helping them go forward and let's break the cycle and you be a good dad someday. You be successful. You don't need to cope with the world's methods. You go down the path of success yourself.
So yeah, because again, I think about your story and it appears to me that him being absent from your life would have been a much better outcome for you than him being present in your life, at least as he was. Now, I'm not saying he can't be healed, he can't be restored, that there can't be some supernatural influence into his life where that would change. But as he was when you were 9 months old, seems to me that would be better for you in that sense. How do you deal with that? Because again, you're addressing the issues of no father, but at the same time, it's not just no father; it's the right father, I guess, in these areas. How do you address that? How do you walk that tightrope?
Well, I mean, honestly, I'm thankful my dad left. I mean, I know that sounds
Right, I
really,
can see that.
yeah, sounds really weird, but I had people that poured into my life and picked up the pieces. And so I had my grandfather instantly came into my life, and he became like my dad. And so for several years, I knew I had this birth dad that lived in Las Vegas. I was growing up in Pennsylvania, and I knew he was, he existed, but I didn't really know much about him. But I had this guy that was my grandfather that basically became my dad. And until I was in until I went into sixth grade and my grandfather passed away, that's when I really felt it. And so that's when it was like, wow, okay, I don't have a guide now. I don't have this person in my life. And so I had different mentors that stepped in and poured into my life. And so that's with our ministry. That's what we do. We try to recruit people, Christians, to get involved in fatherless individuals' lives. And we tell them, hey, you have a circle of influence. And who's in your circle of influence? You might have a niece or a nephew that's fatherless. You might have a grandparent living down the road that she has grandkids she's raising, or grandparents that are raising grandkids. It could be a single mom you work with. Who's in your circle of influence? And then work with them and mentor them and help them and put them on a path of success. That's what I believe you can change it, because a lot of times, sometimes it is better for that dad not to be in their life.
Yeah, and I guess then the that leads to the other side of the question, which is I see too often, and I coached a lot of high school teams, and um, and it seems like to me, based off of talking with these kids in particular, that even though the parents, or even though the father was in the home, he wasn't present. He was there physically,
Yeah.
but he wasn't there emotionally. He wasn't there for any other aspects of being a father. He really wasn't doing anything, with minus maybe an exception of the only connection we have is I want to live vicariously through your sports career. Um, so again, does that have a similar? Uh, that seems to have a same negative impact that not having a father at all would have on the children as well. Does your research indicate that as well?
Yeah, when the dad's not, he's kind of there, but he's not really. We
Yeah.
we've well, with our, like I said, I've spoken to over 200 churches. We've been to conferences all over the place, the country, and one of the main things that we have been told, and we honestly have more people coming to our table telling us this than telling us that they grew up without a dad. And it's how many people they say, I grew up fatherless, or I grew up with a dad in my house, but I was basically fatherless. They're saying
Right.
that my dad was in my house, but he didn't care about me. And so they're basically telling us that my dad was, he was around, but he wasn't. And what we've kind of come to the conclusion of, he was there physically, but he was mentally, emotionally, and spiritually absent. And that's one of the things that we've found in our, with our ministry.
So do you help those who are kind of don't that like I said, they have dads, but they really don't have dads. Like they have it only in a certain section or a certain thing.
Yeah, they have it physically because
Yeah.
he's there, he's present, and he's providing. A lot of times they'll say he was a good provider. He maybe was there to provide for me, but the rest of everything else in my life, he was not around. He didn't nurture me mentally. Like, he didn't teach me about things. I didn't learn anything from this guy. He didn't. He wasn't there for me spiritually. He didn't take me to church. He didn't teach me about God. He didn't, my emotions. He didn't help me process the things that I was learning and growing. And I struggled, with that as well.
So, but again, for those kids that are in that situation, does your organization? I mean, how can they determine or see that in an organization or in children on it? How can they do that? Or can your organization help those at all?
Well, we kind of help them. We can. I mean, we've had people get our resources from that, because anybody can claim God as their father, through a personal
Right.
relationship with Jesus Christ. And so,
Right.
honestly, with our ministry is, regardless of your earthly dad, whether he was a great dad, or he was a terrible dad, or he was an absent dad, or your dad passed away, regardless of that, through Jesus Christ, God will be your father. That's what the Bible tells us. And so we can have a relationship with God, our Heavenly Father, through Jesus. And so that's how we teach it. I mean, anybody, regardless of your situation, whether you feel like you were fatherless, if you feel like you were fatherless, claim God as your Heavenly Father, and He'll fill that void in your life. He'll fill any void in your life if you let Him.
So nowadays, I mean, the culture is pretty much saying that fathers are irrelevant. It's optional. How do you respond to that narrative? Again, particularly since you're dealing with moms, a lot of times the moms chose that path as well.
Yeah.
How do you handle that response to them without diminishing their own sense of self-worth that they might be struggling with as well?
Well, I mean, we're built to want a mom and a dad, or a male figure or a mom figure in our life. And so what we say with our ministry is, if you're growing up with a good mom and dad in your life, your life is in balance. It's kind of like a scale. Okay. And so your life's in balance, and usually you can operate better. But if mom or dad's gone, your life is off balance. And that's what we're seeing from these statistics that we talked about, how our life goes off balance because mom and dad's not there. And
Right.
and then we expect these kids to, they should be fine. They should be fine. Well, they don't have a dad, but they have a mom. Well, moms can't give everything the dad can give. Dads can't give everything the mom can give. And we expect these kids to be like, they'll be okay. And that's why we're seeing these kids going down the path of drug and alcohol addiction. They get involved in gangs. They get involved in crime. Girls get involved in relationships, and then they end up having, an abortion or suicide or things like that happen. And so we're seeing these lives that are off balance, and so our job as Christians is to bring their life back into balance and to teach them about God as their Heavenly Father. The Bible says in Psalm 68:5, a father of the fatherless and a judge of the widows is God in his holy habitation, because he wants to father them and he'll help bring their life back into balance.
So now it also again appears when I look at culture, when I look at kind of the systems we set, the public policy systems that we set in place, it almost appears to me that um, it appears to me that our policies almost promote it, whether again it's welfare, whether it's and how we have it with children. There is the ease of which you can get a divorce now, that type of stuff. I see you nodding. I was about to ask you agree with it. I'm assuming your nod says so. How do we address that part of the issue, or should we even address it? I mean, are we working downstream by just trying to address the fallout from it?
Yeah, I mean, our culture is definitely enabling. We're in an enabling culture. For whatever you want to do, you can do it. If that's the way you want to live, or you want to choose something. So definitely enabling families to split up easier than they used to be. And I'm not saying if you're a mom's listening to this and they think, hey, my husband's unsafe, I would tell you, get away. If you think it's an unsafe situation, there are times where you
Right.
need to get away from them. But if it's something where, hey, you can resolve some issues and it's a good relationship, and you can build your relationship with your husband or your wife, and you can get back together, and it can be good for the kids, and it can be good for you, and you can work through it with God, with a counselor, get back together. If it's unhealthy and they've cheated, they've broken the marriage vow, they've abused you, you need to run. You get away from that situation,
Right.
because it's not healthy. And so I think we have made it easier in our culture, but sometimes there is a need for, like, if there's abuse or something, there is a need for there to be a separation there. Women shouldn't be in unsafe situations. Now we have, but I think women do realize that because we work with single moms all over the country, and like we had a single mom support group in Las Vegas, and those women, they knew, and they weren't interested in having a man. After they had that bad relationship or whatever
Right.
might happen, they weren't looking for a man to have, but they knew they needed mentors for their kids. And so I think that they know they need support in that situation. So I don't think women are just walking around saying, hey, I don't need a man. I don't think that's the general consensus around single moms. I think that's more of a media, the way the media has pushed that, you know what I mean?
Right.
At least what we've seen on the ground with single moms, I think they want genuinely to have a good relationship with a man, but they can't seem to find a good guy. And so they're like, hey, well, I'll just find some mentors for my kids. So I think there's this image that the news and TV and stuff like that has pushed, but I think genuinely single moms, if you really talk to them, they crave having a good relationship with a good person and having a good father figure for their kids. And so I think the reason why the divorce rate is high and things like that happen is because they get in relationships with these guys that are kind of sometimes dirtbags, or you know what I mean,
Right.
or they walk away, and so that's what we're seeing happen.
Why do you think it happens to begin with? I guess in the sense of, and I don't know if you ever like talked with your mom, for example, but many other women that you've had to talk to be like, okay, you knew the guy was a jerk. Now I know there's situations where they might have died in war, or they might have, there might be something else behind it, but the divorce rate among Christian married couples that pray together are extremely low versus those that aren't. But when you're around somebody that is a problem from the beginning, why do you think they get in that? Because obviously they care about their lives and their family, or they wouldn't be joining your support groups to begin with. So why do you think they end up in those situations to begin with?
Yeah, well, my mom and dad, they had an interesting situation. My dad came to Pennsylvania to visit some family, and they went to a party. She ended up at a party. He ended up at the same party through some friends, and they weren't. He had trusted in Christ and become a Christian when he was younger, but then just ran from God, and he just wanted nothing to do with Christianity. And so then my mom, she wasn't a Christian, and so they went to this party. Not sure what all went on at that party, but wild party. And that night they got engaged at this this party, and
Oh, wow.
they just
Okay.
met, and so pretty wild back in 70s craziness going on. But so then they got engaged, and they got married soon after that. And then so as they were married, my mom started going. She went to a revival, trusted in Christ as her savior, got saved, and started going down this different path. My dad, he just kept on coping with drugs and alcohol. He was actually heavily involved in the adult film industry in Las Vegas. I mean, his life was just horrible. So, and they moved back and forth between Las Vegas and Pennsylvania. So they had a pretty unique situation. But I think, sometimes one of the things in our culture is men sometimes have a hard time growing up. And I think we're seeing that.
Yeah.
And so there's a lack of that where they're just immature. So some of the single moms that we deal with, these men, they're immature. They're not willing to step up to the plate. They're apathetic, and they don't want to be the dad that they're called to be. And I think when there's a lack of God in your marriage and in your personal life, that's when we see a lot of the results going on with marriages, with people that are just, they're selfish. They don't want to give to the family like they need to. They're willing to provide the money, but that's about it. And so with our ministry, we're seeing that happening a lot, where these families are falling apart because there is a lack of God. I think when there's, like you talked about, when they pray together, they stay together, and that is so true. At least with our ministry, we've seen that.
So I want to switch now to because it's even though it is across the board ethnically of this issue, but it seems to be really targeting Black Americans more. I've seen the statistics of anywhere from as low as 50% of Black children all the way up to 75% do not have a father in the home that they grow up in on it. I don't know which statistic is accurate, but either one of them is terrible. Why do you think it's more unique among that particular minority group versus Hispanics or white Americans? Why do you think it seems to be so much worse in the Black community?
Well, I think it's become a domino effect in their culture. I don't think there's anything unique about them as a person. You know what I mean? I think there's been a domino effect, and it's just been kind of one of those things where it's gone so far that they can't stop it, right? And so they need some cycle breakers in the culture there to lead them in the right way. But I honestly think it's become such a big trend where and the thing is, we teach with our ministry is when you're a guy and you don't have a dad in your life, you're not taught respect. Dads teach their kids respect. They teach them how to respect themselves, how to respect people, how to be a respectable person, how to respect a lady, how to respect people in their community. And so when they don't have that dad in their life that is going to teach them how to be a respectable person, they don't respect anything. And so we see that in African American culture sometimes in some communities where there's no respect at all for anything, and there's crime happening and things like that. I mean, it can happen in a white community too. It can happen. It doesn't matter. So you see that happening. But there's also studies involving even white individuals as well. And because we first started this ministry in 2008, some people try to tell us, well, this is just happening in, Black communities or lower income communities. And we're like, man, it's everywhere. There was one study that said a white teenage girl from an advantaged background is 5 times more likely to become a teen mother if she grew up in a single parent household than if she grew up in a household with both biological parents.
That sounds crazy.
Yeah, because it's that lack of a dad. See, for guys, it's the respect issue and teaching them how to be a man. But with girls, it's a lack of security. Dads provide security to the girl. They teach them, hey, you're my little princess. I love you. I value you. I cherish you. When they don't have that, they end up going down this path of, where do I get my security from? I feel unsafe. I need a man around me. I need a boy around me. And then that boy or man says, hey, I'll be your father figure. I'll provide security. And they end up a lot of times taking advantage of them. That's why you shared this statistic earlier. 71% of high school 71% of pregnant teenage girls come from fatherless homes. And we see that happening because of they're looking for security.
These numbers are, I mean, they're numbers when you read them, but when I think about the fact of, you go into a restaurant and you look at, like or even a high school or whatever, and you look at the teen girls that are there and realize how many of them don't have fathers and the problems that could come from that. That's unreal from there. How do you when there's Christian men out there, but they may feel unqualified. One of the things I've learned, I think one of the biggest obstacles for people being bold is a lack of confidence. But I think the same thing would apply here. Like I don't know, especially if you're not around younger people. That to have that boldness to be able to mentor a fatherless child. So how can they start? What can they do to kind of move to that direction?
Well, I think one of the things we've done is we've overcomplicated mentoring. It doesn't have to be
Yes.
it doesn't have to be a big brothers, big sisters. I get matched up with a kid. And that's one of the things that we teach with our ministry. It says in James 1:27, it says, pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction. And if you look up widow there, it's talking about a single mom or a woman that's lost her husband due to death or abandonment. And so if we would just look at there's two words in there, to visit, and we would take that seriously as Christians, and we would go in our circle of influence and we would look, okay, who's in my circle that is dealing with this issue of fatherlessness? Because it's an epidemic in our nation. It's the number one social issue in our country. What could I do? And we can't get overwhelmed by it. So I think we get overwhelmed by it. I think we overcomplicate mentoring.
Yeah.
I look at your circle and say, okay, what niece or nephew do I have that's growing up like this? Do I have any cousins? Do I have any people in my direct area that are maybe dealing with this? And then how can I visit them? Visiting them can be looking at different ways. It could be a text message. It could be maybe they live across the country and you Facebook message them. Maybe you send them a care package and just say, hey, I care about you. Give them some resources. I'm not trying to self-promote, but we have books you can send to them. You can tell them about our God is My Dad app. It's a free app they can download from the Apple and Google Play Store. All kinds of videos and content. Start kind of driving them to pointing them to God. We have free devotionals on the YouVersion Bible app. You can tell them about those. That'll help them start on their journey of healing from not having a dad in their life. Simple ways like that. And then as you start talking to them about it, maybe you could meet up for coffee with them. Maybe you could take them to your favorite hobby if you like to fish or work on your car or you like to cook out or something like that, and have them involved in that. And so it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. It doesn't have to be awkward. Bring them into the things that you like to do. You don't have to feel like, because a lot of guys do feel inadequate. I can't do this. But it's inviting them alongside. And like my mentors invited us alongside. I had a youth pastor that liked to go camping. And so he had 5 small kids that he had adopted, him and his wife adopted. And he invited my sister and I to go along with him. And it wasn't like he was spending all the time with us, but we just got to go along. We got to see how they set the camper up, and but just being there, and being present in that situation. And also, as a teenager, he got some help. He had some help disconnecting the camper and things like that. So we were there to be part of it, and we were learning because of it. So I think, like I said, we overcomplicate mentoring. The guy that's like my dad to this day, he's my mentor. I worked for him. And so if you have a business that you can employ teenagers, I worked for him. He taught me how to work on air machines and vacuums that you see at gas stations and stuff like that. He had like 600 air machines. And so I used to go and work on those, and I learned a lot from that. But then he would invite me over to his house for supper at night, and I got to sit at their table and talk about life. And so that stuff, that was invaluable. It wasn't real formal. It wasn't anything. He's sitting down looking at me like, well, what do you think about God? What do you think? He was just having a conversation. And then we'd ride in the car to go to an air machine or a vacuum, and he would play Chuck Swindoll, the old preacher Chuck Swindoll. And, and I learned about God through that, and we'd have conversations. It's just real informal. And sometimes it can be formal, but a lot of times it doesn't have to be.
I think, I get asked to speak to different groups, and they're like, well, how do you put faith in your business and all that? And I said, there's no magic formula. You treat it as if it's true, because it is. And I agree with you. I think too often we're trying to find the right questions, but if we're living our life as if we're already living it for Jesus, it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, it should be just natural when we talk about it. It's not like, again, I'm going to look like I'm a nice guy, but it's like, but if it's part of our conversation and part of who we are, it's not weird. And I think too often we try to super spiritualize it, or we try to hide it. And so I really love what you just said there. I think that's a really good approach, because I do think people overcomplicate it in their head. So I'm glad you said there's an app. It's Go to My Dad app is what you said is the name of
No,
the app?
God is my dad.
God is my dad. God is
Yeah,
my dad.
it's
I'm
okay.
sorry. Yeah, God is my dad app. And then you also have godismydad.com, where you can go and get resources, et cetera. How else can we find out about stuff that you're doing? If there's single moms listening to this that want to find out about the groups that you have, how do they go about doing that? You find that at the website?
Yeah, if you go to godismydad.com, there's links there for single moms, grandparents raising grandkids, fatherless individuals. And then if you're a church, a pastor wanting to get involved and help these families out, there's a section on there for churches. But just go to godismydad.com. I just want to add one thing. I just thought about this, Peter. If you have tried to help a fatherless individual, we've had some people tell us that. I tried to reach out to a fatherless kid and they rejected me. Try again, because there's always kids out there. They want it. Some kids are going to reject you. Some kids it's not going to work out. But there's a lot of other kids out there that are like, man, I'd love to have a mentor. I'd love to have somebody pour into my life. I just felt like I needed to add that as well.
No, I think that's a good point too, because I know I look at evangelism as everybody adds water to a bucket. And so you may not see the bucket overflow, but you may add enough to it so that the next person can have the water overflow. So even though they may have rejected you or you rejected your style, doesn't mean that they're rejecting it completely, because you may lay the foundation for somebody else and make it easier for somebody else. So
Exactly.
I agree completely with what you're saying. I think it's everyone wants to plant the seed and get the fruit the next day, and that's not how it works. I like to garden, and I wish it worked that easy, but it doesn't. So
Yeah.
I get it. So I really appreciate that message. I think that's awesome.
No problem. Well, thank you so much, Peter. I appreciate it. And yeah, godismydad.com is where you can find us. If you search for God is my dad on social media, YouVersion, YouTube, we're there. We'd love to have you follow us, and we'd love to connect with you.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Sean, for being on the program, and thank you so much for what you're doing to address this need. And I love the approach of what you're taking. I think it's a great way to approach it. It's a great way to approach it with it, and using James 1:27 as your foundation, I think is amazing too. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.